Yoga, right, is not some exercises you do. Yoga ultimately is experiencing the true self. So you do the physical practices so that your body can be comfortable in meditation. You do the pranayama so that your mind can be still in meditation. You sit and meditate so that your mind becomes disciplined, or I don't like to use discipline because it's such a like tight word. I think it's a kind of like an old school yoga word, but so your mind becomes focused, so your mind becomes calm, so your mind becomes like within your, so you have more control over your mind. Remember, restraint of the mental modifications of the mind stuff is yoga, right? So the restraint of the mind, that is yoga. The restraint of the mind comes from the practice of meditation, but you're not supposed to just sit on the mat. Like the restraint of the mind should be with everything you do all day, every moment. And that's where the meditation comes, because that meditation of that restraint from the mind allows you to feel the stillness. And then that stillness and enlightenment is with you throughout everything you do. So much of what I work on really, this is why I was passionate about joining Yoga Alliance, to be honest, is because I wanted to change this narrative of what yoga means. It's not an asana. Don't get
Yeah.
stuck just in the asana. You're missing out on all the juicy stuff and the ultimate goal of yoga.
Hey,
Hello, and we're back.
good morning.
I probably owe everybody a little bit of an apology. I keep saying that I am going to get some sort of schedule going.
Yeah, I know
Well,
how
that hasn't happened yet.
to.
Those of
How are
you who are
things
on
going?
video today, when I go full screen, you're going to see like this beautiful messy kitchen in the background of me like trying to unpack. I feel like I am in unpacking, I don't know, purgatory. It's just like
Yeah.
over the past few years, Dee and I have gone through this crazy journey where like we had this huge house and we had said, you know what, we have too much stuff. We don't want to live in this house anymore. We think we're going to downsize. And we had been living in this like bedroom in New York. And so we were like, okay, we're going to downsize. So we start going through all of our stuff and we get rid of so much stuff, like so much. And then I guess then we decide we're going to move into an apartment over at my parents' house, right? So now we're living in New York, the apartment. We have our house in Buckingham, 5 miles down the road from the apartment. So in the apartment, we kind of cull everything we really love. The stuff like if we were going to move into a tinier house, this is the stuff we would bring
Yeah.
and have, right? And then my niece moves into our house. So everything that we had left in the house that wasn't like, it was stuff like my grandparents' books,
Mm.
things like that, that wasn't going to move into the tiny house maybe, but stuff we didn't really want to get rid of. That
Yeah.
all moved downstairs to our basement. So now we have a basement full of stuff. It took us two like 26-foot U-Hauls to move here, plus, a trailer, plus all the things. And so you really just realize like how much stuff you accumulate. And I have gotten rid of, I'm not kidding, truckloads of stuff. I feel like if every year I don't go through and like get rid of stuff, when they say the universe loves a vacuum? I feel like
Yeah.
that's what happens. Like you get rid of stuff and then it flows back in. You get rid of it, it
Mm.
flows back in.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, I'm trying to
So
get rid of this stuff, and it's like, mm.
I mean, we bought all this stuff from Virginia and I'm still getting rid of stuff because now we're in this house and we're like, okay, this is going to be our home for a while. And so, what fits into this home? Who are we going to be in this home? What do we want to keep? Like, what's our identity, our persona in this home? And there's a lot of stuff that I had in my former home that doesn't fit into this home. Like, our other home was like this big, huge brick Italian villa type home, 2 stories, but like really like just expansive with big, 5-acre yard. here we're at the beach, right? So everything's like bright and airy and beachy, and like some of my stuff just doesn't like match with the beach vibe. So some of it I'm painting because I like to repurpose things. And so I feel like, if you can take a piece of furniture or something, a pillow, whatever it is, and repurpose it into something new, that's my preference. But Habitat for Humanity and Goodwill is also going to be the beneficiary of very
Yeah.
much stuff.
Absolutely. Wow, that's
So I feel
great to
like
hear. I
every
mean,
Saturday, Quentin's like, "Are we going to meet?" And I'm like, "Nope, I'm
no,
moving
no,
furniture."
I have a trailer to unload. So I get it.
Yeah, we
No.
still have a couple things over in our storage unit, but we're almost done. So that's feeling pretty good. The storage unit will be emptied out by the end of this month, and then we have all the time in the world to settle in. But I don't want to be one of those people, Quentin, who's like 5 years later, like, I haven't unpacked this box.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah. You're like, I'm still unpacking. You've lived here for 3 years.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. That's not going to
Wow.
be me. So we're really going through every single thing we own and really looking at it mindfully. And the funny thing is Dee and I have just accepted we're not going to live in a small house. Like, uh, I had a tiny home intention, and the universe had a different intention for me. And so I just am accepting also that. And I think that's an interesting, I don't know what you want to talk about today, but
No, I mean, I'm listening. Like I said, I'm in listening mode. I was like a little sick the last couple days and retrograded. So I'm listening for now.
I think that's kind of like an interesting topic today, a little bit of like intention, like your intention versus God, the
Yeah,
universe, higher powers intention for you.
yeah,
I feel like that's such a balance for so many people, and it also goes back to like personal will versus God's will.
yeah,
And that's one I have always like really pondered over, and I would say at different points in my life even struggled with a lot, is this idea of God's will versus my will. And this house is like a perfect example because I'm not kidding. So when we bought our last house, uh, we were going to get like a prefab house or like one of those like, not stick built, but what do they call them? Like
yeah. I mean,
factory built houses.
yeah,
One of those
yeah,
ones they
yeah,
deliver, right? And set on
yeah,
site. I liked it because it was very, they can be much more eco-friendly and much easier on the environment and things like that because they build in these factories and then they bring them and there's less disturbance apparently for the land and the space and all this stuff. So I said, I don't want anything bigger than 1,600 square feet. I think that's huge. I think that's enough. It was bigger than what I was living in. I ended up with a 4,000 square foot house. And I mean, literally, God was like, "You are buying this house." Like, we kept saying no to the people who were
yeah.
trying to sell it to us. They kept lowering the price. Then, literally, the bank would only loan us this certain amount. And they were like, "Don't worry about it. We're going to loan you the extra 50,000 we want for the house."
Wow,
So it's
wow.
like that
Don't worry
when
about it.
so how do you say like my will, like my intention was to be in a 1,600 square foot? And I got into an argument. My dad and I like to tussle all the time and kind of argue, debate back and forth. So I was literally like arguing with my dad, like, no, 1,600 square feet is perfect. I'm not gonna have it. He said you could go up to 2,000. I was like, no, that's too big. End up in 4,000 square feet. So then we're like, 4,000 square feet's too big. That's just, it's a lot of house.
Yeah,
We don't really need that much space. We're going to choose to, then we were like, let's explore tiny home living. Like, what would it look like if we were just, maybe not super like 100 square feet, but like, what would it look like if we were like in a small space? Because we were living in this one bedroom in New York.
yeah.
It was just like a little, literally a bedroom with a bathroom, but it was kind of set up as like a little teeny studio. And then we lived in this apartment that was 800 square feet or 1,000 maybe. And that felt like pretty good. We're like,
Mm.
this is actually pretty good size, pretty manageable. So then we come down here and we're getting ready to, like, rent and move and just figure out what we're going to do in Myrtle Beach. We're looking at all these places.
Yeah.
And just through, like, again, the universe just stacking all these things in place, I end up in a big house again.
Yeah. You're so funny. He's like, oh, shucks. I mean, we were talking about, I think last time we talked, we were talking about like your heritage and you're like you have all these files and like you end up being like the family like
Yeah.
library, I guess. And you can't do that in a tiny house.
You cannot. And so
Yeah.
I really like, I mean, I really am grateful. This house is beautiful. It really feels like home for us.
Mhm.
It feels really lovely. The energy in the house is just fantastic. And we have enough room for all of our friends and family to come visit us and stay as
Yes.
long as they want. There's a
Yeah.
totally separate unit for them, like a space for them to just be in. And so that's great because now we live in a place where actually also people want to come visit us because who doesn't want to go to the beach? So fun to be at the beach. Um, yeah, so it's like so many blessings, and we have a separate little space for my mom and dad. So we have like a little vacation, like set up for them. So they have like their own bedroom, meditation room, and like a little bathroom in their own space. So they can just be there and it's just theirs, and nobody else really needs to stay there or be in that space. So, um, yeah. So it's really fascinating how this happens to me all the time. I'm so vehement, right? I'm such a strong personality and I have such strong direction.
Yeah.
Um, I've
Mm.
always really resonated with that, like, marching to the beat of my own drum. Like,
Yeah.
really, I've always had a strong intuition, a strong connectedness. There's very little confusion in me. I always have like a strong direction I'm going in. So I have really strong opinions and really strong ideas.
Yeah.
And then God is like, ha
It's
ha
like,
ha.
yeah. He's like, you think your opinions are strong? Let me show you true strength. That's funny.
Right.
I
So
feel
this collective like higher power energy that I'm tapped into is just like that is not your path. Like that's not what I have planned for you this lifetime. I have something very different planned for you. And so how do we like surf that idea of like, you know, that I have one idea? I mean, I've always had one idea, right? I've always had an idea. Like when I was 13, I decided I was going to be an actor and I was like all in. I was
mm,
obsessed with acting,
yeah.
obsessed until I was probably about 20, it might have been like 26, 27. And I really felt like acting was going to be my total path. Maybe when I was like 23, 24, that's when it started to be like, no, this you're going to do something else. This is not your path.
Mm,
You're
mm,
not going to have this. But for 10 years, I was all in,
mm.
like 100% and thought this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And now when I look back, I'm like, why would I want that?
Literally, he's like, what was that little girl thinking?
What was that about?
You're making me think like um so I like to like in my own like little practice, I like to assign like a yama or niyama with each month, and then the other two it's like japa and hatha. So it's just something for me to focus on. And Pisces, which just ended, and which was, Pisces, late February to now, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my theme is like Isvara Pranidhana, like surrender. And like any
Wow.
Pisces, like Pisces goes well with this. Like Pisces represents like almost like the cosmic womb, or like sort of that place of uncertainty where like you just don't know what's what. You almost can't even really see clearly what's happening. You're just kind of responding to stimuli, almost like a baby in the womb. And you have like
Mm-hmm.
like you know like I mean, I have so many like little things that have happened in the last couple of weeks, but um, one thing that came up was my niece. Like, I've been talking to my niece and my sister a little bit more. And when my sister was pregnant, when I was like 13, I remember like, like putting my hand on the belly, and then maybe like Daphne, who's my niece, like she would like reach out and touch. But it's almost like there's like this film, like there's like this like yeah, there's skin, there's all this in the way of like direct contact. And
Yeah.
um and I think a lot of time life is like that, where it's like, okay, I know I want to put my hand here and do this, but it's like I don't even really know what this is. Like I don't even know. You don't even know what you don't know. You could have no frame of reference for even seeing the world that's outside when you're born. And um, there's this essence of like, okay, I don't know like what's gonna happen at all in my life, but like I know that I have what I need to survive. Like it's sort of like it keeps you. What you're talking
Mm,
about is like your will versus divine will. Is like when your will is in charge, you're always looking at all of your circumstances, and you're trying to correct them to make sure that they're like in alignment with your will. Like, I want to be an actor, so I need to practice this. I need to watch this movie. I need to study this. Like you have your whole schedule that you set around your particular goal. But like you say, God is like, oh, you don't even know that like you're just a baby. You have no idea that I'm about to rebirth you into this whole nother world and realm. And a lot of the stuff that you had, you might not be able to take with you. Like I even wonder, like using the baby analogy. It's like you're in the womb, you got your umbilical cord, you got the placenta, you got the things in there that are kind of like your friends and your homies until like it's time to leave them behind. And then now it's like, but of course, like in that rebirth situation, you're being taken care of. And one mantra I think that really helps me on this, like what you're talking about, is like I surrender. Like I surrender to something higher. Like hands up, like you got me. Like handcuff me and take me to the higher place. Like, and the reminder that you know God. I had to say this to myself. Like God likes me more than I like me. Like there's things that I do that are
yeah.
self-destructive.
Aw. Yeah.
Like so it's like yeah, my will also has things that are destructive in it, at the same
Yeah.
time, whether subconsciously or consciously. And so sometimes we can forget that, where we're like, oh, I have my goodwill, like the sheep, but then there's the wolf's will. And that's where surrender comes in, where it's like, okay, yeah,
So I love this. Yeah, this is such a great topic because it really, I mean, I think most religions talk about some form of like God's will being the ultimate. Swami Satchidananda would often say, like, there is no other will. There is no your will. There's just God's will. Your will is a false perception.
mm,
So it's sort of like, it's like the drop of the ocean thinking it's separate from the ocean.
mm,
And that drop, because it's in an individual form, thinks that it's making some sort of impact. And yes, when that drop falls on the water, maybe it makes a ripple, but it's still ocean, right? Like, so I think a little bit, you know, that's why I think surrender is such a powerful practice because um, if there is an individual will, which again,
yeah,
that would require an individual self, and truly, there is no individual self. There's only the eternal connected self of everything. We're
yeah,
all just one big connected self.
yeah,
So if that's the case, then really I feel like, Swami Satchidananda, one of my favorite things that he said, and I've talked about this a lot before, is how do you know it's God's will? Because it's done. So definitely everything in the past is God's will, right? That's easy enough to look at and be like, okay, everything that's past clearly was God's will because that's what happened. And so that's very clear. The only thing I think maybe if we had some influence, and again, like who knows?
mm,
I think the only influence we'd maybe have is in the present moment. Like how we
mhm,
choose to be, Not what we do necessarily, but how we choose to be in the present moment. And that means, and that's a weird thing, right? Because the moment and the present is such a that's why meditation is so key, right? That's why meditation is sort of comes before Ishvara Pranidhana, um, because that total surrender is a practice, but also you got to be able to like meditate. Oh no, Ishvara Pranidhana comes before meditation because it's a yama or niyama
Yeah, yeah.
technically.
But I know
But
what you mean.
but like you have to be able to like feel that present moment and be in the moment. So you got to be able to meditate so that you can experience the moment and see how your being in that moment can then influence technically the future. But of course, like, it's funny because quantum physics tells us there is no present, there's no past, there's no future, there's just the present moment, and everything exists in this moment.
I've I've been
That's
I've been
trippy.
holding I've been holding on to that. Like it's very empowering because then it goes. I think okay, so I think or what you said made me think of this. Like okay, so there's being in the present moment, and it's like okay, how am I being in the present moment? Am I like because the present moment is always happening whether you're paying attention to it or not. But the question is
But
like
yeah,
what
yeah,
is
I mean, it's here.
yeah,
That's
it's
the only
here. It's
thing that
always
exists
here.
is the present moment. Right.
But it's like I think Swami Karunananda said this, like each one's effort and attitude impacts the whole. So I think like if there is like to the extent that there is like because this is to the extent that there is individual will or our way to look at individual will
Yeah.
could be like is there a way in the present moment for me at least to adjust my attitude or my intention in this moment like we said like we have to surrender to God's will to the world all the things that are happening so rather than putting all of our energy and effort into even like doing actions to change it more so like you said like how are you in this moment what is your intention and like because like we all know like but maybe we're sharing this for the first time to a lot of people is like there's seated meditation but then there's making everything in your life like a meditation like there's phase one and
Yes.
phase two you use seated meditation as a tool really I feel like to prime the day and do all these different things like so many different benefits to meditation but I think you're not always going to be able to meditate in your certain spot or you might forget or you might oversleep or you might get sick and the question is like how can you then carry on a meditative practice, focusing on the present, no matter what you're doing, or at least for the vast majority of your activities. Like for me,
You're bringing,
yes,
sorry, I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment. You're bringing
please.
up a really good point because I think this is worth just pausing for a moment and reiterating what Quentin just said. Yoga, right, is not some exercises you do. Yoga ultimately is experiencing the true self. So you do the physical practices so that your body can be comfortable in meditation. You do the pranayama so that your mind can be still in meditation. You sit and meditate so that your mind becomes disciplined, or I don't like to use discipline because it's such a like tight word. I think it's a kind of like an old school yoga word, but so your mind becomes focused, so your mind becomes calm, so your mind becomes like within your, so you have more control over your mind. Remember, restraint of the mental modifications of the mind stuff is yoga, right? So the restraint of the mind, that is yoga. The restraint of the mind comes from the practice of meditation, but you're not supposed to just sit on the mat. Like the restraint of the mind should be with everything you do all day, every moment. And that's where the meditation comes because that meditation of that restraint from the mind allows you to feel the stillness. And then that stillness and enlightenment is with you throughout everything you do. So
Mm,
much of what I work on really, this is why I was passionate about joining Yoga Alliance, to be honest, is because I wanted to change this narrative of what yoga means. It's not an asana. Don't get
yeah.
stuck just in the asana. You're missing out on all the juicy stuff and the ultimate goal of yoga. So, carry on. I
No,
just wanted to like
that's
stop and really reiterate that because I think that's a really key point of what yoga
100%.
is and what the purpose is.
And I think like maybe I what I've experienced in my life, you've been around a lot more folks that have lived their whole life like this than I have, but there's an analogy in civil engineering with like water resources, and you guys have seen this all in your normal life. There's something called laminar flow and there's turbulent flow. So when you have a water running in a stream or through a pipe or out of the faucet, this is usually how we'd see it out of the faucet. You go to those places that have the really nice faucets and you turn on the water and it's like clear water and it's like just like it's almost like just solid. A lot of rivers do this too, like in certain spots, like where it'll be no turbulence. It's like you can still see the bottom of the river, but the water's moving. And there's typically a speed. Well, this turbulence can be caused by rocks and impediments, stuff like that. That's one way, which we would call obstacles. But another way is just like if water moves past a certain velocity over a certain area. So if like the area is this big, but the water is moving too fast, it'll start to flow turbulently, which will means that like water molecules are knocking around. That's typically how we see the water come out the faucet, where it's like, psh, and it's kind of like usually it looks like there's a lot of bubbles in it. And
Yes.
so there's laminar flow and there's this, and like there's this efficiency with laminar flow, which is like the smooth water moving, where it's like you have just the right velocity, just right through the right area, and there's just like efficiency to it, to where like the water molecules are not interfering with each other; they're all moving in the same direction. And I think in meditation, like we say, like to me, seated meditation is sort of like still lake, where you're trying to, not trying to, but yeah, almost like a still lake. Like dude sitting in meditation, you're just imagining just like a calm. But usually, what I'm trying to describe now is almost like laminar flow, where it's like, okay, your mind has to move when you're walking your dog or when you're doing your other activities, but it doesn't have to flow turbulently. How can you allow like, and I think Swami Karanananda also said this too. She was like, a clear mind can move very fast. Like it's not like you're meditated out and you're
Yeah.
like all zenned out and now you're very slow and very passive. But it also it really, like you said, this focus, this efficiency that gets built to where, okay, I'm moving, I'm doing something right now. So my mind, like to me, like the best way to describe this would be like a flow state, where it's like the water's, your mind is moving as you're doing this task, but it's not causing any turbulence. And like the civil engineering analogy to this is, the more turbulent the flow, like there's a lot of friction on the pipes. There's a lot of friction. Like imagine a channel or a river that has a lot of turbulence or it's moving really fast. It's going to start eroding at the walls and it's going to be a little bit more destructive. But if there's a laminar flow, there's a smoothness to it. There's an ease to it that allows like the vessel that's holding the water to undergo like, less damage over time. And so, anyways, that was
If
something that
you've
comes.
if you've ever like been in the presence of an enlightened being, like enlightened masters, that's exactly what it feels like to be in their presence. It's like they're moving, they're doing things, I mean, Swami Satchidananda could be like on a tractor or like a backhoe
Mm,
digging up, you know, the basement for Lotus Temple,
yeah.
but it was almost like time stretched or stood still, and like somehow he was moving like more smoothly than the rest of us through time.
No, I know. Yes, that's perfect. Oh my goodness.
And if you
No,
have the opportunity, I mean, there's lots of incredible people you can be in their presence, like Sadhguru,
yeah.
Amma. There's so many people, the Dalai Lama, like, any incredible being like that, to go be in their presence, and all of a sudden you see like how you feel like, whoa, they are laughing, they're moving, all this stuff, but then all of a sudden like this peace descends, and you start feeling like,
Mm.
right? Like,
It's funny because that like there's a saying, and I think Conor McGregor said it with martial arts. He goes, um, "Smooth is fast," and I think like like I forget the first part, but it basically like what you're saying is it's like there's this way to embrace time and like your movements that's like as smooth as possible, but it's almost like it's like I imagine like an artist, and it's like everything, or a song, and it's like your favorite, your favorite song, your favorite piece of art, and it's like you're just listening to it or looking at it, and it's like every piece of this is just right, like this, the color of the sky, and or the way that this beat drops or whatever. It's like it's funny because the word that I use to quantify that quality, like maybe not enlightened beings, but a subsection of that is like cool. Like there's something about that where it's like, oh, that's like a graceful art piece just that happens to like breathe like all of us. But I see that there's like a correlation between like, like what you're saying, like the calmness in the mind, the meditative like mental spirit, and how it helps you navigate your actions in a way that resonates peace. Like using the
You
turbulent
know,
flow. Yeah, keep going.
it's a great example of like a visual example that I think about for this, that those of you who maybe don't get to see enlightened being, is what the Wachowski sisters did in The Matrix.
I don't
Like
remember that.
that. Oh my gosh, you need to go back and watch The
I haven't seen The
Matrix
Matrix
again.
in a minute though. Yeah,
You
yeah,
have to go
yeah.
back and watch it again. That is like one of the most yogic movies I think ever
Mm,
created. It's so
wow.
powerful, the themes, and if you look at it with like a yogic mind.
Mm,
So what they did, I mean, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon did this too. It was movie making where for the first time they were able to stop, and slow down the cameras and change the views and all this stuff. So it created, now you youngins are probably used to it. When The Matrix came out, it was like mind blowing because we'd never seen anything like that before on screen.
oh
And
wow.
so when you were in the movie theater, I probably saw Matrix in the movie theater like 10 times. Because when you were in the movie theater and you experienced that, it was that idea of like, so at one point like Neo is dodging the bullets and they
Mm,
slow it down and the
mm,
bullets are coming at him, but he slows down time. And
mm.
so the bullets are so slow that he
Yeah,
can just dodge the bullets, right?
yeah.
But then they speed it up and then we're back in like real time. And that's where I think like when you're in the moment, because the
Mm,
moment slows everything down, because the moment is all time. And so when you can feel just like, I mean, honestly, I haven't been able to stay in that space. I have experienced it where all of a sudden it's like everything kind of like stops. Your mind is just present. You are here. The key is to stay in that space. And
yeah.
that's really like the work that we do. But like, you will, if you practice enough, you will experience that space. That you can experience that space. It's really, and it's incredible. It's like, it's addictive. It's yummy. It's juicy. It's all the things.
I mean,
But I can't, necessarily keep in that space 24/7. That's why I'm not Swami Satchidananda and Sadhguru and Amachi and,
I think
the Dalai Lama and
you're making me think of like some of like my generation's version of that, or like some of the things that remind me of that is like there's like the animes. I referenced a couple animes, but like I grew up on Dragon Ball Z, and but then there came this show called Naruto that came out. Another very instrument, like a very very. Because I'm realizing now, like, okay, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Like, what are the disconnects between us and the older generation? And like, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I could probably look it up. Like, how many people watch anime since, let's see,
oh wow.
like, I'm curious, like, like, 750 to 800 million people outside of China and Japan. So it's like this was a type of art that didn't even exist for your generation or the previous generations, and it comes from like the Chinese and Japanese cultures, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so like for a lot of us, like we are imbued with a lot of these and now I'm realizing a lot of these like Eastern views just through like some of these shows that we used to watch. And anyway, so there's this guy named, he's like kind of one of the like he's kind of one of the main villains later on, but this is one guy named Sasuke. And the way, and then he has an older brother named Itachi, and Itachi, I would say, is the epitome of what you're saying. And it's interesting. Itachi even has this power where he can manipulate time, but the way he
Mm.
moves, it's just like, like a lethal ninja ballerina kind of energy, where there's this pace at which he moves, but it's just right. Nothing's ever rushed, and he also has like, anyways, so okay, so there's that. So for anybody that's kind of like thinking, that's maybe like has some of the references I have, like Itachi, Sasuke, Neji, these are kind of folks that like operated in this flow state when they fought, and there was this effortlessness to the way that they fought, and it was like glamorized, like everybody loved it. But then there's another character I talked about, who is probably like one of the most influential, is Uncle Iroh from the show Avatar: The Last Airbender. And
Mm.
there is a way that he would operate. I would say like in that show, he was their version of the enlightened master. He had all this history that like he couldn't really talk about, but you found out about it later, where like he cross trained with all these different types of people, and he was much more open than like anyone else in the show. But the way that the show had him positioned in all the scenes, it was like he's fierce, he can be powerful, but he always seemed to find like this groove of peace in the scenario, where it's like somehow, some way, like even though there's this massive battle going on, like Uncle Iroh is like battling with ease, and he's also finding like the most peaceful, the most easeful like solutions to situations. And like I think Uncle Iroh for a lot of us is like definitely like our version of like Yoda, I guess, or something like that, where
Hmm.
where they're strong and old, but they also like move in this way that is like so far beyond what most people have ever seen. And but something that you said made me think about, okay, well, one other thing that I've been thinking about is like with Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for example. Something that I've been getting into, and we talked about it a little bit. But jiu-jitsu itself means a gentle art. It's meant to be gentle. I don't know if I talked to you about this. Um, Unlike wrestling, which has a much more like, a roughness to it, like, you can't get on your back. It's in wrestling there's a lot of like more aggression, like it's about strength and
Jiu-jitsu is
power.
beautiful to watch too. It's like a
Yeah,
much different
it's
thing to
beautiful.
watch. Yeah.
It
I'm,
has this
I'm,
flow to.
I think we did talk about it because we talked about when I went to go see my grandson.
Okay, dope,
My
dope. But
grandson's
I
studying jiu-jitsu.
what I've realized is like the way that you really get good is you rely less on your own strength, and you rely more on flow, and you pay attention to your opponent, and you're like, okay, I know my opponent, like like you're sort of much more acting in this space of like surrender, and this space of like responding rather than always like acting. So like rather than being like, okay, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna get back control, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna choke this guy out. Sometimes it's like, okay, if this person's on top of me, I'm gonna wait for them to try to move to an even more dominant position, and for a millisecond they'll be off balance. And if I'm not being present, or if I'm too focused on what I want to do, I'll miss that opportunity to take them off balance and get on top, and then they'll just be on top, and they'll be in a better position. And it's like this presence that you're talking about is so important, because sometimes your plan might be to like, I'm just gonna bash and win, and I'm gonna be successful the whole time. Like I'm not gonna be ever be on my back, and ever in a comparable position, or I'll never be like close to being submitted. Like that is not part of God's plan. You know what I'm saying? Like God's plan is for you to have
Yeah.
like the full depth of all of those experiences. Like He wants you to be on your back and fight. He wants you to be the underdog and the top dog, and see what that's like, and kind of look at life through all these different angles. And
Hmm.
so that's really helped me in jujitsu, where it's like, okay, I'm on my back. This isn't a problem. I'm actually going to use this to my advantage.
Yeah, I think a lot of martial arts get this kind of idea. It's interesting because, of course, Chuck Norris just passed away.
Oh yeah, he
Let's
did. R.I.P.
give a shout out, and yeah, like
Yeah,
what a
yes,
great martial artist himself.
yes.
But I one of my quotes that I really like go back to over and over again is this be like water
Mm,
from Bruce
mm,
Lee.
yeah.
Like resonates with me so strongly. What a, again, what an insightful, incredible like prophet and like wisdom keeper Bruce Lee was. He was a lot of other things too, but that doesn't take away from his wisdom and what
Yeah.
was flowing through him. And that idea of like just flow like water. And so with my leadership coach, we're working, this month is actually about flow. So it's interesting that like you're flowing, I'm flowing, totally separate, right?
Yeah.
We haven't talked about this idea that we're both focusing on this flow right now. And then going into the fire horse, how does the fire horse, like kind of that energy, right? That's so intense. But at the
Mm.
same time, so many people are resonating with this idea of flow. And that fire horse is, horses are amazing to watch, right? They kind of actually embody some of this energy that we're talking about of like galloping. Like there's something there's something that's so peaceful about watching a galloping horse.
Literally. You're like, oh man, look at the tail just flowing the wind and the mane. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like they are just that
That's a
they have
quote.
a way of being right, like running, galloping, but being in the moment and being so present. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I love that analogy. I think in the little animal spirit deck card that I've brought up, the horse one is like the most mature earth element, and it represents like unstoppable force. Like it's like momentum, and it's like the advice it gives is meditation and strength training, and how like this is really like it's saying this is the secret to the horse's power, but this is an analogy to people where there's it's like the momentum that you need isn't always like some external thing. It's just like we said, it's like that meditative practice. And it's interesting how meditation is paired with strength training, because in a way like sometimes meditation does kind of feel like strength training. Like you use the word
Yes, it
discipline, like
does.
like you need the same muscle of discipline to keep you strength training is very similar to meditation. Like you just got to get there, get to the room, get to the mat, and like sit down. And but
It really
oftentimes
does
like
feel like
that,
exercising a muscle, right? Like it feels
yeah,
like a muscle when you're bringing your mind back and then it
yeah,
wanders and then you bring it back. It does feel very much like lifting a weight, right?
and it's very much,
That
and it's
same
very
kind
much,
of like repetitive action, but
yeah,
like to
yes.
gain strength and build that muscle. I feel like it's the same thing with meditation. You're like, wander, wander. Oh, bring it back.
Here we go,
Okay, wander,
boom.
wander. Bring it back.
It's so true. Yeah. And I think like even like for like Safra and I were talking about this, like whatever type of strength training it is, like to me jujitsu strength training, because some of them dudes are just like
Mm-hmm.
no flow, straight just straight strength, and I'm like fighting for my life. Or like whatever it is, like I think strength training is more than just lifting weights. It can be like anything that we
Yeah.
feel like it requires some amount of strength. But it's sort of like we're saying with the meditation, with all these sorts of things, even exercising very specifically, it's like when you're not in the present moment, or you're not, like this happened to me a million times. I'll be doing curls and I'll lose track of the number. And I'm like, dang it, is it 9? All right, no, let me go. Is it 10 or is it 7 or whatever? Like, and there's this. It's all like correlated to like your overall capacity to move forward. I think so. I guess this is like one of the topics I wanted to talk about, I guess, or that's been on my mind is like you talked about religion, and um there's I think you said like you mentioned how like each religion has like this idea of God's will, and this has been something that's been coming up recently is how evangelical Christians in America, quote unquote, in America, feel that Israel is a fulfillment of a prophecy that is outlined in
Mm.
the Bible. And so it's very interesting that you brought me up, because that's the first thing that came to my mind, which was, you know, we also, the spiritual community slash religious community, we also feel a need to execute God's will. So if you have a scripture that says, I mean, it probably doesn't even say that, but let's just say like if it does say that, like then this plan to be a good Christian, then you must execute this plan. And it's funny because a lot of people never really heard about this, but like I grew up, my first church was Baptist in the South, in Mount Zion. And I remember in Bible school how they told us like, okay, now that Israel's created, like we're much closer to Jesus, like Jesus Christ returning and all these sorts of things. And then I guess I'm like more recently people have been talking about this more openly about how like there's a theocratic view that's pushing the Middle East wars, and that it's a part of a larger prophecy to like basically bring about the end of the world and all this kind of stuff. But Israel being founded in 1948 was fundamental. And the thing that made me even more interesting about this, or that America under the Masons was founded in a way to execute this plan. So all this would have sounded crazy to me if I didn't grow up in a Baptist church in near Quantico. And another thing that was crazy, or another thing that's interesting about it, is that like they always talk about how there is an intention. Like there's a couple things that have to happen, but another big thing that has to happen is like Israel essentially has to expand from the Tigris to the Euphrates, and um and that basically this has been a long time plan put into place for I don't even know how long, but like a long time. And it's interesting because when I look at the world that we live in today, and like I'm wondering to myself like, why do we keep doing these crazy things? Like why do we keep like why does it seem like what people really want doesn't really matter that much? And I think we can selfishly decide what God's will is, or we can put quote unquote our God, or the God that you subscribe to, over another person's God or something like that. And but another thing that made me, another crazy thing about it was realizing how many people didn't know. Like I thought most people knew about this, but then I'm realizing like, oh, Catholics aren't taught this, Anglicans aren't taught this. A lot like non this isn't talked about in non-denominational churches, but this is something that is talked about in more of like the Southern Baptist style. I don't know if it's just Southern, but I'm just saying like that style of
Yeah.
preaching. And yeah, where it's like a lot of the times we can, I love present. I love Bob Marley emphasized this. It's like God is present. Like if you look for God only in like previous scriptures, and then even when you read those scriptures, you're probably not reading them right. Like I'm reading. I tried to reread Revelation, and I'm like, I'm like, dude, this is like, it's like upside down cursive, and it's like it's so mythical, and there's all these sorts of things. So it just made me it made me think about how
And
sometimes
a lot of
even
it was translated by men.
yeah, it's like you're translated between
What
two
happens when you
different
translate
languages.
it by a woman? When a woman
Yeah,
does
there
the
you go.
translation?
There'd be a lot more details.
It's different. It's very different. I was
I
just
feel like the
reading
word,
about that the other day, like the different translations. I'm reading this book about Mary Magdalene, so they were talking about the Bible and
yeah.
how when the men translated it, translated certain passages, they just attributed horror to
Mm,
this certain word, but
mm.
the word didn't actually mean horror. But in their minds back then, that's what correlated for them. And so they just put the word horror in there. Whereas then later on, like this woman came back and actually translated it, and it had this totally like different meaning. So I think
I
it's
mean,
interesting also, like when we look at like translations and who's translating it and who's what it's saying. So
and like the details that are left out too, where it's like just knowing men in 2026, it's like we don't really ask that many like we're not like we don't want all the details, all of the circumstances, which I feel like would have been a lot more beneficial. And I feel like in more Eastern texts like the Ramayana, I haven't read all the Mahabharata, but I know in the Bhagavad Gita it's like they have a lot more detail about what's going on. Now I don't know like but when I like yeah, it's like it's just different. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, if you don't know that like our connection with God is so individual and almost so private and so I don't know. It's so specific to you that it's like it's almost like you can't really translate it because it's like if someone was translating, say someone translated the New Testament or the Old Testament from Hebrew to Greek, it's like that person is gonna unless there's 100 other people there, but even then 100 people isn't enough people to represent everybody. They're translating it based off of what they know and what they understand and how they can see it. And then
Absolutely.
someone comes from there and translates it in the using the Bible just specifically, but this is probably true for many things, I guess, except the Quran. But then you have from Greek to Latin, then which already has its own thing. Then from Latin to Old British, and then you have the Old British to the King James version. So it's like you have all these different translations, and it's like that person who translated it, that might have been a very real translation for them. And I'm not going to take that away from them. Like I'm not saying that they're lying about it. Even if women would have done it better, it still would have been like her perspective. But
Yeah, no,
either
I
way,
mean, it's also the times, right, that they were living in
yeah.
and what they could perceive at that time. And so that's a real, yeah, there's not, I know it's fun to always think there's some malevolent undercurrent of
Mm.
evil going on and people being bad intentionally,
Yeah.
but I think probably most people just think they're doing the best they can in that moment. And so they think they're
1,000%.
right.
1,000%. 1,000%. They're
Yeah.
like, and so that's what I've
They're not
been.
like, I'm going to do this so that for millennia, women are considered whores if they do this thing or whatever it is, And
No, yeah, it's so true. And you're like, and you might be thinking to
yeah.
yourself, like, okay, this is just one word, like, but you never really know, like, 5,000 years from now, like, how your interpretation can impact the whole society, and you might not have even been planning on it, um,
It's it's so
when you thought,
interesting that we're talking about this about the Bible because also this exists in a lot of different translations. So
yeah,
um the I don't know if we've talked about this before, probably, but the
mm,
Yoga Sutras, right? The Yoga
mm,
Sutras of Patanjali were translated by men. Only
yep,
two women in history that we know of have translated the Yoga Sutras. Two women in
wow,
4,000 or however many thousands of years. One of them, I can't remember that woman. The other one is my friend Nishjala Devi. She
mm,
went and studied, learned the Sanskrit, went word by word, translated it, and her translation is significantly different than the
mm,
male translations that we have. The intention behind it and the wording behind it. And there's this softness in it that through her understanding and her experience, like the way that she is translating, it is beautiful. If you have not read her translation of the Yoga
okay.
Sutras, everybody should go out and just buy Nishchila Devi's book.
How do you spell her name?
Nishchala, and then Devi is Devi. And it is it's yeah, Safa should read it because I mean all people should read it, but women, I think any woman on the planet who's studying yoga should really have a copy of this book and read it because it is again like different people are going to use their experience to see things differently. And when she went back to the words, especially because she just did this, right? She is doing it in like, modern times. And so when she's going back to the words, it's like there's a bigger vocabulary and a bigger, a wider understanding of what this word could mean also. And so it's beautiful. It's an incredible book. And I think she just did, I think she did one and two in her first book, but then I think she just translated the whole thing. I think the whole thing's done now.
Beautiful. All right, well, I'm gonna check that out. Yeah, I
Yeah,
need a new
it's,
Yoga Sutras or another one. I let my homie borrow Swami Satchidananda, so I would love to add on to it. And the Yoga Sutras, yeah, fire. Everybody should definitely do that. I'm like, Yoga Sutras is my number one recommended book, at
I
least by
know, it's
Swami
so good.
Satchidananda. So if you like this one as well, like then I'm sure that yeah, it's worth it. Um, I think in there even like I think Swami Satchidananda's favorite verse. I'm interested to see. I don't know if it's his favorite verse, but when he translated, he said this has been very useful to him, and I wonder how she translated it. But it was uh there's basically I forget the exact verbiage, but it's basically like there's four types of folks you'll run into: happy, unhappy,
Yeah.
um, and well,
She
happy.
did change, I'm pretty sure that she changed some of that, like wicked. She did not use the term wicked.
Yeah. What term? Do you know what term she used? Because wicked is kind of like I can see why he would use that term because that's I feel like
Let's
that's just older.
can we stop our
That's,
recording just for a second?
yeah, for sure.
All right, we're going to stop the recording, guys, and I'm going to see if I can find the book, and we're going to look this up real quick. Okay, we're back. Not that you guys missed us. This was just a moment for all of you, even though it was quite a bit of time for us. Um, so it's Sutra 133. If we're looking at Swami Satchidananda's translation, it says, by cultivating, these are the four locks and four keys, by the way. By cultivating attitudes of friendliness toward the happy, compassion for the unhappy, delight in the virtuous, and disregard toward the wicked, the mind stuff retains its undisturbed calmness. Cool. Four locks and four keys are so practical. They are amazing and serve you every single day. So here's her translation. To preserve openness of heart and calmness of mind, nurture these attitudes. Kindness to those who are happy, compassion for those who are less fortunate, honor for those who embody noble qualities, equanimity to those whose actions oppose your values.
Mm,
That's very different than disregard for the wicked.
mm,
But it also gives you an idea of like language and how language can,
mm.
like, the time period in which this was translated. And by the way, I don't think Swami Satchidananda actually did the word for word translation.
Mm,
I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure parts of it were used from other translations.
mm,
Um, so it's interesting to hear the difference between what she pulled from the Sanskrit
mm,
and the other translation that was pulled from the Sanskrit.
mm,
I
It
mean,
is.
that's a very different tone, disregard for the wicked versus equanimity towards those whose actions oppose your values. Now,
Yeah.
especially in these times, right? So this is one of the things that's actually I've had a really hard time with the Yoga Sutras because this idea of wicked people, right? So first of all, the four locks and keys are not so much like people; they're more actions of people or qualities of people. So don't think like there's wicked people. There's just wicked actions or wicked qualities happening during this time when people have very different values from us. And we are all struggling with trying to figure out how to live in particularly this United States during this time. Saying disregard toward the wicked holds a very different energy than saying equanimity to those whose actions oppose your values.
Mm,
And so I really, I have a little bit of struggle with that because, of course, Swami Satchidananda, I love more than anything in the whole world.
yeah.
And I think his book is brilliant and it's one of the most used books, Yoga Sutra books in all the yoga trainings. So you're all, all you yoga teachers out there are probably familiar with it. But this idea of equanimity to those whose actions oppose your values. That is literally what we are living in today.
Yeah.
Like this idea of actions opposing our values. That person's actions are opposing my values. What do I do with that? Do I be angry? Do I hate at them? No, it says equanimity. And how do you attain equanimity? You've got to calm the mind. That mind has got to be under control, but it goes like reverse because the practice of equanimity will cause a more calm mind, and the practice of calming your mind will cause more equanimity. Sorry, that's a hard word to keep saying over and over again. Equanimity. So
Yeah.
that's a really powerful, powerful thing in this time. And her translation, it's so fun that we just read that translation because I haven't read her book probably since it came out, really. And that is such a powerful translation for these times. It's so funny because I just actually messaged her this morning, and that's why she was on my mind. And
Mm.
I was talking about her book because I just sent her an email to check in. And that is like, that's key, guys. That's deep right
You
there.
know, and it's, I think what we, on a greater scale, like what we're trying to say is like read different translations. Like, because, even like with the Bible example, you have like the Ethiopian, then you have the Catholic, then you have like whatever Protestant version of the Bible that you have. Like, you could also get different things from those different texts.
Jehovah's Witnesses have like a totally different Bible.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
an
And then if you
interesting thing.
if you want to read also, like, the Book of Mormon, or you want to add certain things to it, at least it'll give you a grander understanding. Or, and then you can decide like for yourself exactly, like, okay. Or if you already are in a particular denomination of whatever it is, then you can just
The
follow
Old
that. But
Testament, you can read a lot of different versions of the Old Testament. You can read the Old
yeah,
Testament from the Quran, like how they perceive the Old Testament. You can read the Old Testament from, from the actual Jewish Old
yeah.
Testament, which they call whatever. I'm forgetting the name. I'm
Talmud, I
so
think.
sorry.
Torah and the
My
Talmud.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All my
Yeah.
beloved Jewish friends, that was just like a perimenopausal flatline moment. Don't hate up on me, please. Don't hate up on me. I'm
Yeah.
53. There's nothing I can do about it.
Look, thank
I'm
you.
trying to
Thank you.
figure it out.
Yeah, you got this. It's like it, and so like I feel that I think sometimes like I like both. Hearing you say this, I like both because most of us don't view other people as acting against our values. Most people will say that's a bad person, or or
He's wicked.
or what I realized,
Wicked.
like, for myself, like what I looked at myself, and I used the wolf analogy earlier, like the wolf and the sheep. It depends on what you feed in you. Is like, or there's selfishness, which can come across as wickedness if it has victims, I guess. Um, but I mean, I think that's the main message that we've been trying to share. Like, and there's a couple of different people that have been trying to do this in their own way, where it's like it's not really healthy to like hate the United States or hate Iran or hate or Israel or hate any of these people that might act in a way
I
that
hate
you feel
Trump.
like is, or hate
Or
Trump.
hate Trump. Right.
Yeah,
And
it was
there's
like
a lot of
people.
hate Trump.
Yeah, people love hating. People just like hating, and I'm like, and I just think I think the equanimity piece towards them, I think, because there's disregard where it goes. I would say, like, as like, let's say, let's like play on the male female analogy. So like sometimes, if you like the example I use, and this is not like, I'm not trying to say they're wicked in this way, but I'm just, because that's the word that was used. I'll be like, sometimes you might be like, New York or me, right, right around here, and someone, was really high off something, and they're just saying a bunch of crazy stuff. Like, I've been called the N word so many times here by random, like, dudes whose brains don't really work. And you could
Yeah.
say, like, okay, I could look at that person and say that's wickedness coming from them. Like, look at their health condition. They don't have a house. They're all these sorts of things that you can use to be like, that is like a person who's down bad. And I can also look at that person and be like, whatever they say about me doesn't really have to do with me. Like, I don't have to take it personally. Like, that makes it easier for me to use that word disregard. Because then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, someone might look at you and say, you know what, Rada, I think you're so ugly. You'll never do this. You'll never be good at this. You'll never do that. And it's funny, my one of my friends would always say this. Like, she would say, she would say, "Oh, I see the devil has used you for wickedness." And like whenever you're having a conversation with someone and they start getting out of character, you're like, "Ooh, I see you being used." Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
I look at it the same way, where it's like, even me, like sometimes I've said things to people that I really should have never said, and I would have never done it, like, but I was in that state of quote unquote wickedness, or quote unquote acting in a way that is against their values. But I think also we act in a way that's outside of our own values. And I think the same rule applies, because a lot of the times you can start hating
Oh, so
yourself.
beautiful. Yeah. Equanimity when you're acting outside of your own values.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
I
is
think
such a
all of
good
those
one.
keys, all those keys apply to you. Like
Yeah.
take
You don't have to
like
hate yourself, beat yourself up, none of that. You can have equanimity. Just be
yeah,
like, that happened. I did that thing.
yeah, I did that
Let's
thing.
maybe not do it again because I don't feel so good, but
Yeah.
it's a thing and it happened.
And I think yoga meditation really helps you do that. Like that's probably why they didn't write it in that sutra like that, because there's already been a lot of different sutras about the different tools that you could use. But yes, like meditation, a meditative attitude of just like looking at the thoughts as they arise, letting them pass, using sort of the laminar or like sort of the flow, like moving gracefully in a meditative state. Like you can use the same thing where it's like if you're in a jujitsu match, like this person is your opponent. Like like that's why I like equanimity, because it's like equanimity is like, okay, this is here. Disregard gives you the sense of turning away from something. Like, oh, that's wicked. I'm gonna turn away from it and distance myself from it. But equanimity says like, I don't have to go anywhere. I can let I can let this be right here, and I can see a greater context. And how maybe this little, this you know, we deciding in the middle of Ramadan to kill the Ayatollah, maybe we can look at that and say, like, that's not really my value. Like, that's not really one of my moves that I would have done. It's a little dishonorable. But let me look at it in the greater scheme of things and say, okay, like, I don't have to like zoom in on just how this makes me feel or how this might make millions of people feel, but how this might be a larger plot in all of God's plan. And I think like, and this is why I was getting to something a little bit earlier, where it's like sometimes people think God's plan is involving a lot of death and destruction and like putting one group of people over another, and that I think that is not in alignment with my value. Now, for me, for my value, I think God's plan is more so like, there's going to be ups and downs, but it's not like it's not oriented around all this death and
Certain
destruction.
people.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I think, like you're right, like and I think that's the spirit that we got to keep embracing and keep enforcing is like you not like last thing I'll say is like equanimity. It's interesting how none of those things say be like negative towards them. Not I don't think anywhere in the Yoga Sutras does it ever advocate like revenge or like or any type of like harm to others and retaliation. Like it's always about how do you get in alignment with a higher power. How do you get in alignment with a higher objective? And those the four locks and the four keys help so much, because yeah, it's easy to meditate in your house or do your little mantra, but anyone you meet someone and they immediately come across as happy, unhappy, virtuous, or quote unquote wicked, or like in a bad mood, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And in this world that we have to live together, like I think if we can start to agree on certain things, like okay, what if we as an American society we start to promote this, like we start to promote um what was her translation? She said equanimity. Yeah, to those who think a little that act in ways that are outside of your values. And I mean, I think that's why we're doing this show anyways. Is so like we're trying to introduce some of these things in an easier way to more and more people so that they can take it upon themselves to learn more. But yeah, like it really does help. And it helps mainly because meditation, the yoga practices, they force you to do it to yourself first, because it's just you. You're sitting there in your morning meditation and you're like, you're you're doing your practices, I guess you could say, maybe trying to practice some of the yamas and niyamas and asana and doing these certain things. It makes it a little bit easier to have more equanimity, to be a little bit, to find delight or to find compassion. Like these qualities are being cultivated, also are cultivated through the practices. And it's like, yeah, it's really hard to be equanimous when you think someone's wicked or when you think someone's trying to hurt you. But
Or
if you're
think
like,
they're really far from your values.
yeah, yeah. But then you're like, no, well, this person might have been raised differently. They might have had this thing taught to them. Like I'm saying, like I'm one of the Christians that was under this belief that and this is why I'm saying this, because Tucker Carlson very famously did one with our American ambassador to Israel, and also Ted Cruz. And it's been all over Instagram, where it's like, in there, Mike Huckabee is quoted for saying, I'd be fine if Israel took all the land between the Tigris and Euphrates." He's like, well, there's countries there. He's like, well, I mean, this is what the Bible says. And so, like, so to me, that was how I was initially raised on the Bible. But then I met Apostle Kevin Millfield in the non-denominational church, who taught about mercy and love and compassion, and like what I now identify as more real Christian teachings that don't have to do with some lot of land, but they have to do with our faith in the mercifulness and the compassion and the love that is associated with Jesus Christ. And I think I can see how, like we were saying, how we all struggle and how difficult it is to know the difference between God's will and your will, and like what our role is in executing whatever God's will is.
That's some good stuff.
Um, but
I
yeah,
think
man.
about like people keep saying, I keep seeing on groups, and one of my friends reached out on Facebook and was just like, well, how do we use yoga in today's
Mm,
world to like maintain, what do we do? Because, you know, things are a little intense right now.
hmm.
I don't know if it's all over the world. I mean, obviously some countries are more intense than, we're still safe. We're, you know, oh, it's so intense for us, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure the Palestinians and Ukrainians are like, fuck off
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
with your intensity. Um, However, it does feel intense for us, and that's our experience.
yeah,
I do not see how losing your own peace is going to add to peace in the world.
yeah.
I will never understand that concept. And so for me,
Mm,
I keep going back to, I've got to be peaceful in my own self. I have
mm.
got to focus on my own peace. You cannot have peace in the world and have a bunch of unpeaceful people.
Yeah, it's
Like,
crazy.
peace is created by peaceful people. So if you're not being peaceful, how do you think there's going to be peace on earth?
Mm,
And so a little bit, I feel like that's kind of where, the hippies and the boomer generation kind of lost the thread a little bit in my experience. They had this idea of like, we're going to all be peaceful and we're going to have peace on earth. And they were singing and holding hands and doing all this stuff. But like, the peace is not outside of yourself. There
mm,
is no external peace without the internal peace.
mm,
And so that's why each of us can do something really, really, really powerful that will reverberate outside of us in a really powerful way. It feels very selfish in some ways. It feels very insular and very individualized to be just working on your own peace.
mm.
But how that reverberates in the world around you. Like, what happens when you go to the store, the grocery store, and you are peaceful? And
Mm,
then somebody knocks your cart. What do? You don't
mm.
react. But what
Yeah.
if you're not peaceful? And you're so stressed out because you're watching the news and you're getting upset, and then somebody knocks your cart, and you're like, what the fuck, man? You just knocked my cart. So
100%.
like, how do you gotta just be peaceful. You gotta work on your own peace, everybody. That's
Yeah.
You've got to.
It's
So
it's mandatory. Stop
it's
waiting.
mandatory. Stop messing around.
No,
Yeah, I mean, we've got to just be peaceful. We got to be peaceful. That's how we're gonna fix this whole thing.
yeah, it's so true. Yeah, it's so true. Um, I think you said something earlier that probably like my last point was, you were saying we're talking about being in the present moment, and like, what role do we have in the quote unquote future? Like, what does this peacefulness, like, not promise us? I mean, to use Christian language, yes, promise us, but like, and I think like what you're saying is exactly it. Like when you practice peacefulness internally, like you don't need to create like turmoil in the world. Like, it's almost like what we're saying is like this the external turmoil is a reflection of the internal turmoil or turbulence or however you want to look at it. And when I look at the justifications for a lot of conflicts, it's always fear. It's like, oh, we're afraid that they're going to do this to us if we don't do this to them first, and da 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 da. Like we have to,
Mm-hmm.
we have to take care of this. And Isvara Pranadhana, it was so critical to me because, and I think even the Yoga Sutra emphasizes this as well, where it's like faith in a divine force that's overseeing and protecting everything is a really quick shortcut to peace. Where if you can just go
Mm.
like but I think many times it's replicated like nah, just have faith. Like you can do all the thought, you can practice meditate, like everything that we're saying we want you to do.
Yeah.
Do your meditative practices that you've heard of or whatever. Like go to do all these good things. But I think the quickest shortcut is actually my sister said this. We lost a cousin, lost one of our older cousins like a few weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. And my sister said, she was like, I don't understand, but I trust God. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't get it, but I know that like at the end of the day, like this somehow, some way is to my benefit, your benefit, our benefit somehow as a whole. Like, and if we can at least look at things that way, then we'll see. I'm using like, how am I trying to look at it? Like, I'm imagining
Well,
like a fish going through a river, and it's sort of like there's like you remember Finding Nemo? Oh, this is a great example.
yeah.
You ever seen Finding Nemo and the turtle?
Yes.
The sea turtles that go on this stream. It's like that. It's like everything. There's all these things in life, all these options you can take, but there is like one channel of motion that is like the most smooth and it gets you to your destination fastest. And that's what I'm thinking of, like through this clarity of mind. It's like peacefulness gets us there faster. I was telling my homie, I was like, if I enslaved you or wage war against you, I'm gonna get way less from you than if I was just your friend and I was peaceful with you. Like, so what I'm
Yeah.
getting at is that when you focus on peacefulness, eventually, building on the capacity to stay in that place as long as possible. Whenever you're in that place and you've experienced it, you see how like, wow, almost like the next move is highlighted in front of you. Where it's less more so like you have to think like, okay, what do I have to do next? How do I navigate myself? Um, how do I navigate like this situation? But when you're thinking like, okay, I am peaceful, I'm calm. One of Thich Nhat Hanh, he's like a Zen master. One of my first mantras he introduced me to was, I'm calming and I'm smiling, inhaling and exhaling. I'm calming and I'm smiling, and you can even smile with the smile portion. And when I did that practice for the first time, it's like before I would let my mind run in a more turbulent sense, but when I started to be more focused on, okay, I'm going to intentionally think about being calming and being happy, basically, but smiling. And smiling is so powerful because it's an action. Like it elicits a physical response that has like a mental relay. So yeah, it's like if you're in the grocery store and you're thinking, I'm calm, I'm smiling, I'm calm, I'm smiling, I'm calm, I'm smiling, and the dude comes in, hits your cart, you're calm and you're smiling. Like
Yeah, exactly.
and so yes, in that moment you did have a direct, it's all God's will, but you can
Yeah.
gain a little bit of confidence and feeling like, wow, I did have a role to play in how I reacted to that situation. I'm half of this situation, and like this is way much more better than me getting into a fight or this person going home and saying, this is why I don't like dreadheads or white girls or whatever it is. Like some people take that and then they add it on to their list of issues that they have with the world. So yeah, I
And
think it's so.
this small action can have incredible reverberation. We think of it as something that doesn't mean anything, but you don't know who that person is. You don't know how they're connected. They could go home and be like, you know, You could yell at them and then they go home and that they're irritated and agitated and then they turn around
Yeah.
and yell
Yeah.
at somebody else and then that person ends up being
Yeah.
the Secretary of State. Like, you don't know how that 20 people down the road line you hit the Secretary of State, right? So like
Honestly,
we are so
honestly,
connected that don't think these little actions don't mean anything and they don't matter. They matter hugely. That's all that matters. Are like these little moments and these little actions of what we do. And the flow doesn't come from doing. So there is action, but the flow doesn't come from doing. The
yeah.
flow comes from being. Who are you being in that moment? That's what causes the flow. So it's not like the doing is going to get you there. So you can't do your way to peace. That's not possible. But you can be your way to peace. So like in each moment, just think about, who am I being in this moment? And if you can be peaceful and smiling, if you can be joyful and, kind to yourself, to your dog, to your furniture, to your boxes of stuff you're unpacking. I'm thinking a lot about that because Dee and I can get really negative about our stuff. And then I think, like, how is that benefiting anything if I'm sitting here being negative about, like, oh my God, I got so much stuff. There's so much crap here. Instead, opening it each box and just being like, wow, hello. You know, we haven't seen each other for a minute. How are you doing? Let's see if we want to exist in this space together anymore. You can do everything with curiosity and fun and interest, and like the world can be magical. Depending on who you choose to be in every single moment. And those moments build up, and then that moment reverberates around you. And that's why smiling at strangers is just such a great practice, because it's just
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
think like I see this when I walk around with Henson, right? So yeah, people like me and maybe I smile at people and they think it's great. But
And
Henson,
yeah.
Henson's special. Like when you walk around with Henson, the world is a beautiful place
Absolutely.
because everybody is smiling.
Yeah.
And I walk down the street and I see people's faces and then they look at Henson and all of a sudden they're just like smiling and they have such joy, right? And he just brings this moment of complete and total joy to people,
Mm.
just being who he is. Henson's not doing anything.
Yeah.
He's just being Henson. And
Mm.
being Henson brings love and joy everywhere he goes. It's so funny. It's like I mean, I've run into a couple people who don't like Henson, but it is pretty rare that you find someone who's like a Henson hater. Because he is just like, he's got
Sure.
the energy. He's got the vibe, man.
Yeah. Good. No, that's beautiful. That's such, yeah. I think we should talk about this some more on our next one because I would, well, I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna text you, but we should talk about
Okay.
dogs and our companions and
Yeah.
and yeah. So anyways, yeah, shout out to Henson. He definitely is like beautiful. Honestly, like when I saw you with Henson off leash in New York, I was like, I have to meet this person because that is so many of the things. That is so many things that I like at one time. I'm about to explode. I'm like, this is crazy. Because a part of the reason why Henson's so beautiful is that he has freedom. Like he has a certain air of freedom to him, and he has responsibility that's coupled with that freedom. But yeah, very very blessed to have him in this world, and I can go on and on forever about Mike Kimmy, but
I
I
know
really like yeah
Kimmy's
yeah
amazing too.
oh yeah yeah
You know
but
what? I'm gonna just tell everybody this, and I'm totally on a tangent here, but
yeah
Kimmy and Henson, when they first met each other, got pretty excited, and they were kind of like at first it was kind of playing, but also like a little bit of like fighting, and like
yeah
they had like this whole thing going on. So it's so funny because when they were doing this, Kimmy caught my ankle and her claw. caught my ankle and cut
Mm-mm.
my ankle. So it's actually really sweet because I have this little scar on my ankle, and it's my Kimmy scar. And so every time I see the scar on my ankle, I think of like Kimmy, because you guys, you got to understand, Kimmy's a sweet love
Yeah.
muffin. Like Kimmy's so great and so sweet.
Yeah.
So it's just funny that like I have this kind of like violent scar from Kimmy of all dogs.
It's so adorable.
But it's so sweet too, because I'm like, I get to carry Kimmy with me all the time. I'm always like, oh, that was from Kimmy.
I mean, that's just a great example of what we're talking about, like how actions can be so small and so minute, but they have like this reverberant effect on people, and you will never even know. Um,
Never be separated from Kimmy.
Never.
For the rest of my life, I have this connectedness to Kimmy that creates this energy, and that is so beautiful. It's bringing
Yes, it
like
is.
tears to my eyes because it's
Oh,
so
that's
beautiful.
cute. Yes, it is.
So on that note,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
all be peaceful.
Yeah. Let's all be peaceful.
Let's all be Hinson and Kimmy.
Yeah. And I think really it's like they make it seem like it's really hard, but it's not that hard. It's not that hard. It takes a little bit of practice, but it's not impossible. And I
And
think that's like
it's
the best part.
I would say the
Is that
thing that makes it not hard is remembering it's just a moment. Don't
mm,
think I gotta be peaceful for 5 minutes or 12, 20 minutes or 10 hours
yeah.
or 100 days. You just gotta be in this moment. This little bite-sized, teeny tiny moment. Just
Yeah.
choose peace. Choose
Boop.
joy.
Yeah. Well, till next time. Thank you. It was an
Till next
awesome talking
time.
to you as always.
Always. Thank you so much, and we look forward to all of you getting to experience this. And again, as always, give us some feedback. Shout out to us. Let us know what you love and what you're interested in hearing more about. And we'll be here. Thank you. Om Om.
Peace.